anything you can fit into it.
You can't throw it away.
No. You know, coins, what do people put in them? The old flowers from their girlfriend.
More tea bags.
More tea. I saw you had a big tea drinker on a couple weeks ago.
I did. Yeah, boy, he was good.
That guy
wasn't
was
he?
serious, man.
Man,
Holy
he was. I could have talked to him for 10 hours.
There are so many universes. You know what I mean? That you're not in a tea universe. I thought tea. You go to Walmart, get you some tea. Oh my gosh, man, that guy.
You don't know. It's almost like a parallel universe.
That's right.
That we're not living in, but they are.
That's right.
Whatever their thing is. Right. You know, say you're going down the road and you're a traffic guy.
Yeah.
Then you're really paying attention to the signs, etc.
Yes, exactly.
Me and you go down the road.
Right. Okay.
We're just going to the next location.
Okay, let me give you a construction guy asked me years ago. Now, Jerome, when you ride down the road and let's say, for example, you look at that building downtown. Now, what do you think about? What goes through your mind when you look at it? Nothing. Nothing goes through my mind. But to your point, he looks at it and thinks about all the different elements. I look at it like it's been there forever, like it's a tree, you know, like the Lord put it there. Mm-hmm. Nothing goes through my mind when I see pavement or a stop sign. Nothing goes through my mind. There it is. It's just part of my life. But I don't think about it. Yeah.
But yet we're both going down the same road.
It's crazy, isn't it? In some ways.
It's almost like if you were a person that, I don't know, you watch these TV shows where the guy's kind of a crazy or something, he's seeing things different than everybody else is, but he's still operating.
That's right. So what was it, the Big Short, that movie that came out?
That's what I was thinking about. Okay. Yeah.
So you had this investor guy who the whole investment world said, you know, the housing market has no ceiling, man, just keep going, keep going, keep going. And this guy, as you were saying, starts to suspect something's really wrong here, and the whole world thinks he's crazy. And it's one of those cases where he turns out, no, he was dead on. He was seeing it from a different angle. It's interesting.
Now, if somebody sees stuff differently, and it doesn't conform with the way we're thinking, can they almost go unnoticed? You know, it's like if like the guy that's interested in traffic studies and he's driving down the road, but we're driving down the road too. He's looking at traffic signs, and we're just driving down the road. But so he can have his own reality.
No question
about it. And it doesn't conflict with ours.
Okay, so you want to go? Let's go in that direction.
Let's go there.
Because it's a really interesting idea. So let me start with because this will take a little bit of unpacking, because when we first kind of are introduced to this concept that I'm about to say, we don't really know what to do with it. And that is this. Here's the concept. We are all trapped inside of our own mind. It doesn't necessarily feel that way, but there's not a dang thing you can do about the way your brain shows you the world.
Is that nature or nurture? Or does it make a difference? You can't control either one of them.
You can control the nurture to a degree, but what you can't control is, and so for the people who are listening and watching, what we're talking about is how you're pre-wired, how you're biologically wired, you know, how tall you're going to be, what color your eyes are going to be, how strong your heart is going to be, all those kinds of things. We can't do anything about that, really. It just is. You can have some good nutrition, and you can change your physical stature minimally, but not, you know, I could never be 6'2", no matter how much protein I ate, you know, during my childhood, no matter how much I tried, I was going to be the height that I am. Okay. So that's what we're talking about when we say nature, how you came into the world, pre-wired. The nurture side of it, and this is an old psychological debate.
Debate.
Going all the way back to the ancients, you know, the philosophers. Who are we? How did we get this way? The other side of it is what you described as nurture, and that is your environment. How much of it makes you you? So some of that side we can control. How much TV did you watch? Did your parents introduce you to classical music? How much reading? What kind of diet did you have?
Were your parents hippies?
Were they hippies? How did they explain the world to you? Which is the primary Responsibility of the parent, primary job of a parent is to explain the world. That's the number one job. We can go that direction in a minute because it's a really interesting one in my opinion. Okay, all of that has to do with your environment. So to a degree you can control that, but here's what you can't control. How will your environment collide with your nature or how you were wired? Because you can take the same family, and anybody who has multiple children already knows this. You see right where I'm going. You take the same family, and those kids are going to turn out different.
Raised the same.
Raised the same. And I can give you a specific...
Or do we think they're raised the same?
Well, okay. I did an experiment in my family. I have twin sons. Okay.
Twins?
Yes. So here they are. Two boys being raised by the same parents in the same timeline, the same stimuli. I'm saying the same thing to them for most of their formative years. So from birth to 10, after that they start moving in different directions a little bit, and then that really accelerates when they're teenagers. But from birth to 10, they're hearing the same thing from the same person at the same time. They could not be more different. They're as different as daylight and dark, man. They hear things differently. From the time they were 2, they would stand in front of me. One of them would stand in front of me, and my word was as the word of God. I mean, I could see it on the boy's face, man. If it came out of my mouth, it was gospel. I knew, man, I got to be careful with this one, what I tell them. The other one, his twin brother, he would always have, respectfully, a bit of skepticism. From the time he could talk, Dad, how do you know that?
And they're twins.
And they're twins, whereas the other one,
yeah.
Yes, Father, speak, Okay, well, how do you explain that? Here they are, man, same womb, same father, twins growing up in the same household, and still today, they see the world so differently, man. They've taken different paths, they have different preferences. It's a fascinating topic, How much can we influence it? A little, but not as much as we think. How much can you influence the way a person sees the world? A little, but not as much as we think.
Well, someone could be colorblind.
Right.
They would obviously.
Literally
colorblind,
yeah.
And that would be a very simple thing, but a huge thing.
Okay.
I mean,
yes.
saying, well, look at the red one. He wouldn't know which one that was.
Okay. This topic has no end.
It has no
so
end.
Great, man. But let me give another example. I sometimes give this in class. This, what seems like a very simplistic and in some ways not very meaningful comparison between men and women, to illustrate how our worlds, in just this one tiny way, but then it scales up and it makes our world very different. Just the physical strength and size difference between men and women virtually puts us on different planets, in a sense. Just the strength and then size difference of men and women generally. Here's one of the ways. Most men, irrespective of what the reality is, most of us walk down the road never fearing any other person. If it's sort of mano a mano. Now, if that person has a weapon or if that changes the whole equation. But I'm just saying, you and I have spent our whole lives never having to turn around to see if somebody's following us.
Never.
I've never thought about it in my life. I have not once in my life thought, should I go out to my car tonight and get that thing out? Maybe I should. That's never occurred to me.
Never entered my mind.
Why not? Well, you can offer a lot of explanation why, but here's one of the reasons why, is because physically, I am not ever thinking about half of the world's population is more powerful than me. Although it may be true, as a guy, we don't think like that. Women think about it every single day they get up.
I've never thought of that.
Just the size difference, just the power difference. Even if a man and a woman are the same size, the man, of course, because of muscle density, is so much more powerful. We never think about it. They think about it all the time. Every place they go, everything that they're doing, from a young girl, they have to begin to think about, is this wise? Can I go here? Can I get myself out of that situation? Think about it. This is not. Okay. If you took that and elaborated on the hundreds of ways that you and I are almost on a different planet than women and how it colors everything, then start thinking about all the other ways, color blindness, intelligence, exposure to literature, mathematics.
Good looking, not good looking.
Okay, that right there, I mean, you trigger such powerful
I mean,
topics.
it's a big deal.
It is huge. It's so politically, I know I'm kind of animated, but these topics are so, whether you are conventionally physically attractive or not, this is wildly politically incorrect, of course, to talk about this because we don't like to acknowledge that. People really recoil, in public when you say, let's talk about the differences between being physically attractive and not. People don't like that. They don't want to. But the fact of the matter is, we have libraries filled with literature that shows over and over and over again. If a person or if a population finds your facial features to be attractive, that has to do with mathematical symmetry, it has to do with, what is the preference of the day, whatever that area is. You are absolutely going to get a pass on so many things. It's what's called the halo effect. People automatically assume that you're smarter, you're kinder, you're more generous. Just because you're good looking, they give you a pass on.
Is there studies that show that if somebody's attractive, then you assume that they're smarter?
They don't even have to prove it. You assume they're smarter because they're good looking. Absolutely. And you assume they're going to do a better job, and you assume they're going to be more pleasant. They have to demonstrate to you that those things aren't true before you then...
Whereas the person that's not considered has to demonstrate that they are smart.
They have to work harder. And let's go back to the wiring. It's how we are wired as human beings. There's something in us that whatever that pleasure is that's caused by seeing somebody who has pleasing facial symmetry. So we know that there's elaborate mathematical formulas in terms of where are the eyes aligned to the top of the ears in terms of being symmetrical to the center of the face. So we know that it's not
the golden ratio. Is that the golden ratio?
Well, we can talk about that. The golden ratio, not with regard to facial symmetry, and the golden ratio has to do with a recurring mathematical formula that occurs throughout nature.
But I think some people connect that to the facial features too. Because it goes in that circle.
That's right.
1.618.
That's right. It's inside of a. You've been reading again.
No,
I told you that's bad, man.
Well, I mean, I read it, yeah.
But this is okay. I'm going to go back to get not too far. I mean, we don't have to stay on it. But the nature versus nurture. Every child is born with an automatic preference for a certain kind of facial feature. This is one of the things we have to do in line at a retail store when our child points at the person in front of them and says, why does their face look like that? Our 3-year-old, we turn to them and say, I'm sorry, we apologize to the person in front. And then when we get in the car, we say, hey, that hurts their feeling, we don't do that. Okay, what's going on there? Our child's natural tendency, we're all wired this way, right, for certain preferences. And things that are outstanding, we can go to this later too, children automatically, why is her hair so red? We have to say, and we have to explain to them, don't do that. People don't like that. Okay, stop right there. In those scenarios, what's going on? It is us recognizing the automatic wiring. It's not good. It's not bad. It's how we're wired. But then the environment saying, okay, let's start to understand something. Let's understand how we're wired. And let's understand what should we do with that. So when we see that, let's stay with the facial. If we see that and it's not pleasing to us, we're talking to our child now, what should we do about that? And we talk them through how are we going to live in this community? How are we going to live in this country? How are we going to live in this world with each other? We say to our children, well, one of the ways we're going to do it is, A, we're going to recognize how we are, and B, we're going to recognize what does that mean in terms of getting along with other people. One of the things it means is we have to think to ourselves. That person looks different. Okay? Now, what should I do with that observation? Should I leave it inside my head? Should I point it out to them? Should I nudge my friend and say something? You see all these kinds of choices we have. Well, one of the things we are trying to do with our children is to say, along the way, because the number one job of a parent is explaining, is to say, okay, let's talk about that person in line. Let's talk about what we saw. Let's talk about what you thought. Now let's talk about how they might have felt. And there, in that simplistic example, is nature, the child's automatic, ooh, and nurture, our saying, okay, let's talk about what just happened and maybe how we do that differently going forward. And all along the way in our developmental years, what is supposed to be happening in our homes, if we're going to live in this republic, if it's going to survive, is that you and I and the millions of parents around our country are having those conversations. Okay, that person looked different. So if for the first time in our lives we see a person of a different ethnicity. So I have 2 daughters from China. So this was a frequent conversation in our house, living in Southeast Tennessee. It's not exactly an Asian citadel, here.
Yeah.
That's not a disparaging remark. It's just saying there's not a large Asian population.
It's not
here.
typical.
So what that means is human beings are wired to quickly notice difference.
You think they're wired that way?
We are absolutely, difference jumps out to you. Think about your own life. It's very easy to do a thought experiment.
Not whether noticing is good or bad, but just noticing difference.
You are wired to notice difference. If we go way back, I don't know how far afield we want to go. I mean, this stuff I'm talking about the topic, but I'm about to jump way back now in sort of the evolution of human history and think about why that is important. If you and I recognize very quickly that animal coming across the field is not anything I've seen before.
Could be a predator.
That's it. It could be somebody from a warring tribe. Oh, they have on the wrong garb. Oh, they're a lot physically different than I am. That's an important wiring to have.
But now you're saying...
You die if you don't have that wiring. Quick
so
example.
You're saying that's a human nature, or has that evolved? Or is that just human nature? To notice something different because it could be danger.
It is our wiring from eons back. Remember, we have...
Or it's just our wiring.
It is our wiring.
Period. We're just wired that way.
Well, imagine there are two, go back a
because
million.
That wouldn't evolve.
Well, okay, let's do a thought experiment. Let's play a game.
Yeah.
Two men are on the African savannah. One of them, just by a genetic quirk, is wired to notice difference quickly and to pay attention to it and to feel threatened by it. There's an important part of the sentence. Notice the difference and in some ways feel threatened by the difference. That is a very good thing to have if you're out walking around the African savannah 1,000,000 years ago. Right? So 2 men are walking. One has it, one doesn't. Here comes what we know as a predator. The one guy runs for cover. The other guy goes up to see what it is.
Steps on the snake.
Steps on the snake. Tries to pet the tiger.
Yeah.
Well, that guy's genetic code doesn't survive. Which guy's genetic code survives? Of course.
The one that notices.
The one that he had an accident genetically, he was wired to notice. The other guy, let me go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. You're trapped in your brain. You can't do anything about how it comes wired. So this guy was wired to see it. This guy was wired not to. Some people are wired to play music. Other people don't understand how it works. Some people, mathematics is like a language. Other people, it's chaos. Your mind is wired the way it is wired. Okay. So our 2 fictional guys, one guy just got lucky and was wired to be wary of a difference. The other guy was just happy-go-lucky and wanted to go pet the tiger. His genes didn't survive, so what's left to pass on? The guy's genes who's...
So it's not evolution, it's just carried on traits.
Traits that caused you to progress. Traits that gave this guy a better chance at survival and thriving. So in some ways, it's the luck of the draw, right? Genetic draw. If you got wired in such a way that you got attributes that contributed to your success, it's much more likely you're going to reproduce more, that your children are going to survive longer, and you're going to
That's where they get that saying, survival of the fittest.
Exactly. So it doesn't just mean the strongest, it means the great investor Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, as they call him, he often describes himself as one of the luckiest guys in the world because he says, look, man, if I were alive 200 years ago, I would be toast. I am uniquely suited for investment of capital. So I've got to live in a free capitalistic society for my gifts really to flourish. So
otherwise, he'd just been
he's useless.
Pulling a team of horses.
And not very well at that.
Not good, yeah.
That's right, not good. He's not an engineer. He admits I can't fix anything.
He's not tall, he's not strong, he's not.
That's it. So he lands in a country in a period of time where the way that he's wired is uniquely suited to make him one of the wealthiest guys in the world. Stone cold lucky in that way. Now, he had a good education, he had mentors, but you see what I'm saying? His wiring was fantastic for this point in this time. Okay, so that's what I'm saying in terms of going back to this topic that we're on. You're wired to notice difference. Why would we need to be wired that? It may be very useful, right? It might even ensure our survival. But now we live in a society that doesn't have any relation to tigers walking up to us, in the middle of the plain. And so now what it is in close proximity with a lot of people who are very different, we're trying to get along. We have a pluralistic, very diverse nation now. And that wiring, which used to serve us very, very well, and still does in certain circumstances, really can be a cause of unnecessary fear,
angst,
tribalism, where we say different, bad. That happens all the time. Different, bad. So my daughters, just to finish that illustration, both from China, born in China. We adopted them right about a year age. They're separately. We've had this conversation in our house many times. Why do people say something about my eyes? Great, let's talk about it. Why do they do that? Right? And so beginning from, we're all wired this way. What about that really tall guy we saw at Home Depot a couple weeks ago? Oh yeah, remember how we said, no, let's wait till the car to talk about how tall he was. Let's don't, right? And helping them to understand, see how you're wired that way too? What about that person who is really red hair, or that person who is really muscular, or that person who, you name it. Our eyes, boom, immediately go to it. Think of the thousands of people we pass every week. We have no way to remember them. Think about the people you remember seeing. You either know them, or there was something outstanding. Look how long that guy's hair is. That's crazy. Bing. Okay.
But now, thinking along those same lines, let's say that all this chaos going on in politics.
Okay,
I've been watching all weekend documentaries of the '60s.
Okay.
And boy, what a chaotic time.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of everything that happened in the '60s.
That's right.
They assassinated 2 Kennedys.
That's right. Oh man.
They had segregation, the
civil rights leader
civil
shot
rights,
dead on a balcony
yeah,
in Memphis.
And then the women's rights, wasn't that big in the '60s?
Oh yeah, it was coming on, absolutely.
In Vietnam.
Yeah. That's right. We were coming unhinged in the '60s.
And we're still here today, better off. So we've got to be positive about what's going on right now. We've got to assume that everything's going to be great.
I think in some ways, this is an oversimplified kind of 5,000-foot view, but in some ways, I think what we have going on is a generational transition. Same thing we had in the 60s.
Which we look back and say, boy, those things really worked out well, I guess, right?
They did. And some of them did. We certainly learned a lot about ourselves. In a free society, these topics are so great, Dee. We're going to be here all evening, man.
I was telling Gwen, I said, we're going to have to be careful. This one will go on all day. But what I was getting to is, if you were, I'm a product of the '60s. Okay. I was born in '65.
Okay.
So by the time I was 5,
yeah,
I had gone through, unknowing to me, Vietnam and all those things that I was unaware of,
That's
absolutely
right. But
unaware
you absorbed it. You absorbed it, my friend.
Did I absorb
You
it?
100%. No question. You absorbed.
What did I absorb?
As a matter of fact, let me just say before I come to that question, by the time you're 8, no later than 10, you're basically who you are. Now, a lot of people want to say there's no way.
No, which
Okay.
religion is it says that by the time you're give me a child till they're
Yeah.
7 or
Well, this basically comes out of early sociology, Emil Durkheim and
maybe maybe the Mormons.
and perhaps they've adopted that. But
Yeah.
this is really a behavioral science observation, philosophical, and then behavioral science in the last 150 years, understanding that by the time you have a child that has reached the age of 10 years of age, it deserves a pause there because it's shockingly short amount of time. Mm-hmm. You basically have your person. You got a little more change. I'd say 13 is the latest. I advise parents in seminars and private consultation. By the time they're 15, you are done. That's it. That gets the most pushback from parents when I talk to them. But by the time that child is 15, and I don't mean done formation. Formation is done by 10 to 13. You're done. 15, that's it, man. You buckle up because here comes the ride. You are on their ride. And parents don't like that. No, they won't. They'll do what I say. No, they won't.
How do you absorb these things till you're 7?
Okay. All right. So what I'm trying to do is edit out the amount of information. Okay. All these different organs in your body, your kidneys, your lungs, your heart, your liver, okay,
Eyes, brain.
all of it. Right now, in all your life, without your permission, your kidneys have been doing what they do. Your heart, your lungs, your liver, your intestine, all of them. They just do it. Who said they could do it? They just do it. They're inside of you. They're what you came with, and they just do their thing. Okay. Your legs are going to do what they do. Your quads are going to do what they do. Sometimes against your will. They're going to cramp. You don't want them to cramp. They're going to cramp at the worst time. You're jumping for that pass, and they cramp on you, and you lose the game. What? You needed your legs to jump. Nope. They had a will of their own. They did what they were going to do without your permission. And sometimes, this is important because we're going to go to this other organ, against your will. I wanted to do one thing, they did another thing. Okay. You have another organ in your body. It's at the very top of your body. It's called your brain. And in the same way you have a heart and liver and lungs and kidneys, you have a brain. And it also does something. It's doing something all the time from the time you're in the womb. We know that children learn inside the womb. Just a very quick aside, there are all kinds of experiments in which...
Some mothers will read to their babies before they're born.
And then what happens when they come out?
They
read them that same book and they monitor either how quickly their heart beats or how quickly they suck on a pacifier. So they'll read them a book in utero, as they say. Once that child is born, the parent will read that same book and the child will suck quicker on a pacifier or its heart will speed up. Versus the mother will read a book the child's never heard before, no reaction. Read the familiar book, the heart rate goes up. Other book, no reaction. So we know the child is accustomed to that book, can learn, that's familiar, that book is familiar. It's fascinating. Okay. Well, the child is not willful in doing this. The child is not sitting there in the womb. Of course, I'm being facetious, but it's not saying, I better pay attention. It sounds like something important is going. No.
Can't even speak English.
Right, of course, can't speak any language. But guess what is doing it? That's right, the brain. Here's what your brain does. I don't want to get too. I hope I don't.
No,
too far.
I'm
all day, every day of your life, without your permission. That's important. And here we go. Sometimes against your will. Here's what your brain is doing. Information is coming through all of your senses. Your hearing, your sight, your smell, your touch, your taste. All of those are collecting data all day, every day. Right now, you and I sitting in this room. Now that I'm listening, I can hear the buzz of equipment. I can feel the seat under me. I slight smell of the tea that I'm drinking. Okay, now that I'm paying attention to it. But my brain was collecting that even before I started paying attention to it. Where's it going?
And what was it doing with that information?
It's storing it in your mind. It's storing it in your mind. Here's an interesting thing we know because of neurological experiments.
Plasticity of the brain?
Well, what seems to be an almost endless storage capacity of the brain. In other words, we think the brain, for what is a human lifetime, now if you lived 300 years, it may not be able to do it. But you're not going to live 300 years, you're going to live about 85 years, okay, Lord willing. The brain seems to be able to store every bit of sensory data all of your life forever and hold on to it. You can't get to it necessarily, but it's in there. So from the time you were in your mother's womb, you started storing data. Your heart started beating when you were in your mother's womb. Okay. Your brain started doing what it does. What does it do?
And your legs kick.
And your legs started working.
Yeah.
Okay, all of that started working. Good. Well, what did the brain start doing? Sensory data. It started taking it in. So we think, and I'll tell you how we suspect that it's accurate. All of your life, all 5 of your senses are constantly taking in information and storing it in your brain. Now here's what your brain is doing then. And this is, oh my gosh, Dee, this is a whole nother stream.
I think it's the same stream.
Okay. And now, so your brain, okay, what is it doing with all that data? Information is coming in. You're hearing stuff, you're seeing stuff, you're smelling, you're tasting, you're touching. Okay. It's storing it. And all the data all your life will be in your brain. Here comes a really important point. It's sorting it and looking for patterns. This is kind of the miracle of what your brain does. It looks for a pattern.
Is that one of the things it does besides store data? Look for patterns?
Yes, what it does is it looks for patterns. It tries to understand probabilities. I don't want to go too technical on this. So it looks for probabilities of the recurrence of that pattern. Then it tries to make sense of what is that. We got to go down that road too. Your brain demands to know what is that. Another way to think about that is what your brain, it's like oxygen to your brain is understanding. Understanding. What did I just experience? Our brain must have understanding. If it can't have understanding, it moves away. It's what we describe as chaos. Chaos, in one way, is simply our inability to find a pattern. That's what chaos is to us. We can't see a pattern. So when you see on the old-fashioned television before there was cable and internet, at 11 o'clock, the snow, you'd have the national anthem.
John Wayne.
That's right. That's right. I'm also 65.
Yeah.
65. 1965 is my year.
Is that right?
Well.
I didn't know
So
that.
we're both old enough.
I thought you were older than me.
No.
Now,
the stress of higher ed.
Now, wait. When
So
you say the brain's looking for patterns,
Yes.
who says that?
Who says
I mean,
that?
there's studies, obviously.
Yes. We are pattern-dependent animals.
Who determined that?
This is all the way from cognitive developmentalists saying...
So that's very understood in people that study the brain. That the brain looks for patterns.
Yes, that's beyond dispute.
I don't need to... okay.
That is beyond dispute
okay.
now. What is our brain doing? Gathering data, storing it, and looking for patterns.
Patterns based on...
The recurrence of that, and the probability of its
Does
recurrence.
it balance that with
Am I yelling, by the way?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But does the brain balance that with its DNA? Or does it balance it with what it's understood until it's 5? Or does it balance?
How many sessions are we going to do? Because we're going to do about 4 or 5 of these. Okay, does it balance this? Here's what it depends on: intelligence. Okay, holy cow! Here we go.
Which you're born with.
What you're born with. You can't do a dang thing about it. I don't care if you wanted your IQ to be 100. What is yours? Probably 140.
Probably.
You want it to be 160. Sorry, man, you ain't going to get it to 160. I don't care how much Bach you listen to. You can't do it. in a way, IQ can simply be understood as how deeply can your brain show you patterns? How deeply can you see patterns in different areas?
Now, does your age go along with how much how your brain
Yes.
saw
Yes.
patterns? Because the older you are, the more patterns you'd see.
Yes, up to a point, then you begin to have diminishing returns. So let's go back to the other end of the timeline. As a child, you see in a very shallow way, very shallow patterns. Let me give you an example. So when you first told your child, I'm dad. So your child's about 1 year, that's when they can understand language before they can express it. So about a year, children start expressing language. Your child you said, dad. Usually they say mama first, not because they like mama better, not because, she's the feeder, but because ma is easier than da. It's just orally, it's harder to form the sound da, mama. Who cares? Okay. So let's say mama. Mama. Here's what your child is next. The next person who went by. Mama. Mama. Okay, why? Because the child got the pattern. Oh, a person, that is a mama. Very shallow pattern.
It was just
All
a person.
those things are mamas.
Yeah.
Okay? Then we tried to take our child to a little deeper pattern. Okay, yes, I'm a mama, but look, mama, grandma, or ma, me ma. Let me make that easier. Okay? Mama, me ma. Mama, me ma. Okay, what are we doing right there? We're trying to show the child a little deeper pattern. Look closely, honey, these are different. Oh, mama, me ma. Stop. What just happened? Went to a little deeper pattern. So now not all people are mamas. Oh, there are some mamas, there are some me-mas. Okay, now we could take that analogy or that illustration and go deeper and deeper and say, yes, there are men and women. There are boys and girls. There are adults and children. Oh, wow, man, this pattern's really getting elaborate now. And we can go down and down and down and down. And so you and I sit here and we know there are old adults, middle-aged adults. Okay, let's keep slicing it up. And then we know there's different ethnicities and there's different genders and oh, wow, man, this thing is getting unbelievably elaborate. What do we have there? Patterns. All human, now this is all human action, understanding, functioning in this world demands that you spot a pattern. If you can't find a pattern...
All right, go back and say that again.
All human functioning and understanding in this world demands that you spot a pattern, no matter what it is. So let's take the sounds that we're making right now. We're very sophisticated because I'm making essentially nonsense sounds. And yet, they are transferring abstract meaning. It doesn't even have to be a solid object. Box. No. You and I are engaging in these unbelievably abstract ideas just from these crazy sounds I'm making. We could bring somebody in from Beijing, China, and put them right there, and they wouldn't know what the Sam Hill we're talking about. And if they tried to speak, they would make sounds. We would look at each other. What in the world are they talking about? Well, pause a minute. What we have is language, what they have is language. Then what's the problem? We don't know that sound pattern. So here's the following sounds. This is kind of crazy. Box. What does that mean? Box. Here's what it means. Someone, some point in our life, held up an object that was sort of similar to this, and they went, box.
Me and you both called that a box.
Of course. Now here's what they could have called this, since it's yellow. Banana.
Or 10.
Or 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that sound pattern, combined with associated with that, gave you understanding, right? Which is the oxygen for your brain. What am I experiencing? This is what your brain must have. A big part of trauma, for example, is your brain's inability to come to understand, to grasp. What did I just experience? What just happened? And if you can't get your mind around it and get it settled into a file, so to speak, in your brain can't get it explained. You can't get it explained. It can traumatize you. It can traumatize you.
If you can't file it in a filing cabinet,
so to speak, inside of your brain. Oh, that goes right there.
See, when I have a problem, if I can just come up with a future policy then I'm okay with it.
What does that mean?
I mean, it's like if I can just come up with a future way I'm going to handle it, I can let it go.
You can say, I can fix that later. You put it in a file called I'll revisit this?
It's like for instance, if say you're driving down the road and you have a wreck and you hit your head on the steering wheel.
Okay.
All right, well, from now on, I'm going to start wearing my seatbelt. When I get out of the car, I'm going to put my seatbelt on. Or before I get in the car. Since I've created a policy, I can let the fact that I had the wreck go.
Okay.
So it's the same thing as you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. You are making meaning. Okay, what just happened? I had a wreck and I got hurt.
And now here's what
happens.
happens.
What is the meaning of this? The meaning is seatbelt. The meaning is okay.
Now I can let it go.
Exactly.
Now,
and so trauma has to do with when you're
not letting
you. Well, you can't let it go.
Now another person might call it file away. It doesn't. No matter what you call it, it's. What you're saying, it's putting it in an organization, or what would you call it earlier?
You can't.
You're seeing not a pattern, but you're recognizing the pattern.
Where does this experience belong? This is why you see.
Yeah, where does it belong?
This is why you see really young children look at their parents. They always look at their parents. What are they looking at their parents for?
To try to see a pattern.
What is it? What is this? What am I experiencing? Who is this? What is that? What just happened? All the time. You look at a child up till about the age of 8. 7, 8, and 9 is when the child starts to pull back. They feel confident enough. They got enough files in their head. They understand the world, or they can explain it to themselves. But prior to that, almost anything that happens, you see the child look at their parent. What are they looking at the parent for? The brain, they're not saying to them, oh, look to my parent now. No. The brain is demanding explanation. Well, to whom are they going to look? Of course, their parent. So they're looking at the parent. And when a stranger approaches, you're holding your 1-year-old child, and a person they've never seen approaches, the first thing they do is they look at you. It's called social referencing in child development. And what they want you to do is to smile. What are you doing there? You're explaining to them. What are you explaining? He's okay. He's okay. So then what they'll do is then they'll look back at the person. But if you don't, if you keep looking at the person approaching, your child looks at you, and you don't turn and signal them or explain to them, they'll bury their head in your shoulder. Why are they doing that? Because they don't understand. What is this? Who is this? And it overwhelms them. So they're gonna.
Is it a predator?
What is this? Okay, you and I are exactly the same today, right now. So let's jump to current affairs, what unfolded in Washington. You hear all over media, this is chaos, 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 chaos. Number one, there is an agenda to a degree. Why is that word used? Because human beings fear, run from, detest, have an allergy to chaos. Why? Because our brains say, when you can't figure something out, get away from it.
When you don't see a pattern.
When you can't find a pattern.
Because the brain is always seeking a pattern.
And when we can't figure out what the pattern is, we want to get away from it. When a person's erratic from day to day, you don't know who that person, I wonder who's going to show up today.
Yeah.
We just rather not be around them. We can't figure out from day to day, what are they going to be like? One day they're on top of the world, the next day they're a jerk. The next day they're flat, the next day they're crazy.
Now, is it possible for some, now I seem to know some people that seem to enjoy living in chaos. Is that possible? Can they actually feel comfortable in chaos?
No. They may like to create the chaos. They're the originators of the chaos, And so to them, it's not chaotic because in a certain way, they are good at pushing buttons like, watch this. So to them, there's a pattern. If I do this, watch it, everything go aflutter.
The brain's still looking for a pattern.
But the person causing the chaos knows the pattern. All I got to do this and watch the chaos happen. The people over here don't know the pattern. The people that are whatever the stimuli is from the person. So let's say a person has power, they can inject chaos by saying, watch this, let's don't send paychecks out this Friday. Watch this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, they know what's going on, but the people on the other side, they don't have information. So they experience it. What's happening? So out of this comes conspiracy theories, superstitions. Whoa, where do those come from? It comes from our lack of patterns. We haven't seen something enough, or we don't understand what we see, or, a lot of times we encounter things that are just over our head. As much as we are uncomfortable thinking that.
But do some people enjoy feeling more comfortable in chaotic situations? Is that possible? I mean, say the brain's looking for, or we know how the brain's working now. But when we say it could be nurture, maybe somebody had a chaotic childhood and the brain feels more comfortable in chaotic childhood because chaos is the repetition that they've seen. I mean, when the brain looks for repetition, does it have to be the correct outcome?
It's a great question. No, because their pattern is the chaos now.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
If your pattern becomes the chaos, if you saw the chaos as the pattern, now you feel comfortable with chaos. And if something's very organized, and like some people say, oh, he's too technical, he's too organized. I don't like being around him.
No question about it.
That disturbs their pattern.
They feel very uncomfortable because they don't understand that pattern. So people who thrive in chaos, and thriving, we don't mean succeeding necessarily, we mean they feel good, they feel better.
They feel comfortable.
They feel more comfortable because they have grown up in a chaotic home. We see this a lot of times in terms of mate selection, for example. I often caution students that we are so pattern dependent that we like the familiar pattern. We will choose a bad familiar pattern.
That was my question.
Over a good, unfamiliar pattern.
That was my question. And so which one does the brain, now we've got the brain looking for a pattern, but you're saying the brain's not looking for the correct pattern, just a pattern.
It's looking for a pattern. So remember, think of your brain.
So the brain's not the ruler of the correct pattern.
Oh, no.
It just
whatever
wants a pattern.
Whatever pattern you show it. And if that pattern is chaos, if that whole child grows up in a chaotic home, oh man, there's lots of literature.
All right, so let's say somebody threw this at me every day.
Yeah.
From the time I was 1 to the time I was 8.
Yeah.
Later in life, could it be possible that I only feel comfortable if somebody's throwing this at me?
Well, you would probably, the answer is sort of yes. Because what you would do is you would probably not lock onto that behavior specifically, but you would probably generalize that to some behavior that I need someone attacking me.
You'd feel actually more comfortable?
You would feel like you function better in that kind of environment. And let's go all the way back where I was saying, without your permission and against your will, the brain is forming patterns. You're not aware that it's forming this, but your brain is saying, oh, there's my pattern. My pattern is my parents yell. You never know when one of them's going to come home. We move all the time.
So your brain's not telling you the right pattern.
No.
It's just telling you patterns.
Your brain doesn't know there's no right or wrong in your brain. Your brain is about you survive. Here's what your brain's about. You survive.
And the only way to survive is to recognize patterns.
You're toast if you can't recognize a pattern. From walking is just physical memorization of a feeling in your body. By the time a child is 1, their body is plenty strong to walk. Then why don't they do it? They haven't internalized the pattern yet. what it feels like. Oh, this is what it,
Walk this way.
This is why you see a child.
One right after the other.
When they're first sitting up, you see, I'm gonna sort of theatrically, when they first sit up, they're sitting on the floor, they can't stand up, but they can sit up, they go like this, they watch you all the way over, they go like this. And they're not alarmed, it's like, okay, pause. What's going on there? When you and I start to tip over, why don't they? They don't have it in their mind. They don't know what it feels like to tip over and fall.
It's not they don't know, their brain doesn't know.
Their brain doesn't know. Now, it will soon memorize that feeling, and to us it seems...
Of hitting the ground.
That's right, and even what it feels like to begin to tip. This is an important step in learning to walk, because they have to know, that feeling is a bad feeling. I need to correct that feeling.
That feeling leads toward falling, and that could hurt.
You got it.
Now it's survival again.
Okay. And in every single, this is such a wonderful concept, and it's strange to us when we're first introduced to it, because it's like, no, he's crazy. That's a college mumbo jumbo. No, just life is what it is. I'm what I am. No. Everything that we understand, all the conclusions we come to, Dee, in life are built on, what patterns do I have in my head? What have I been exposed to?
Or what patterns did your brain recognize?
Did it recognize? So, and some people can see very deeply in patterns. People who can see the most deeply, we sometimes call them geniuses. They see patterns that we think, how? How did you even see that? I have friends who have the gift of, I have some friends who have literally what I think of as a gift of making money. And I will ride down the road with them, and they will point out opportunities and say, now right there, that'll be worth 3 times as much 4 years from now. And I will have no idea what they're even talking about. And what are you seeing? I can't understand what you're seeing. I cannot see that pattern that they're pointing out. That's why I'm in education, not finance. And no matter how many times they try to explain to me, and no matter how they try to break it down, I can understand what they're saying to me, but in terms of me then going out and being able on my own spot, I can't do it. My brain will not do it.
It didn't recognize the patterns, or was it born with that trait?
Well, I think one is causal of the other. I can't recognize those patterns because I wasn't born with whatever that trait is.
With that trait.
But
golly, that's deep.
Okay, and so
because now you have to combine. You say, will this person be a good painter, an artist? Well, it depends on if they're born with the traits, and if their parents allowed them to see the patterns that caused them to see these patterns in that certain era when people thought that painting was attractive.
Yes. Now,
am I summing it up?
You're getting close. I mean, this is yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of an overview, an introductory level, but that's exactly right, is what has your brain been exposed to? What has your brain been exposed to? And the more that you can be exposed to and look and see, because let's go back to something you said is really important. Does your brain know right from wrong? No, it doesn't. Think about human history, Dee, how long we got it wrong.
Now
if the brain automatically knows right from wrong, how for thousands of years have we gotten it wrong?
All right,
where the crap did slavery come from if the brain knows right from wrong?
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
So going to that point.
All right. What is the point? What point?
The brain doesn't know right from wrong. Now let's go to religion for a minute. Does the Bible say? Are you born to know right from wrong?
All right. We can go from
Because what's the Bible say?
We can stand on one of two, in talking about this, platforms. We can stand on what is a psychological platform, or stand on what is a more spiritual. Let me not use religious, spiritual. Okay. Which platform?
I have to marry one with the other.
Well, you have to. Every person is like.
And
let me say, as a believer,
yeah.
What I think we are is we are animal. There ain't no question about that. If you want to debate that, you're going to lose. We are animal. But then mysteriously, we are clearly this other thing, which we describe as spiritual. There is something else. And so this life, in a lot of ways, is figuring out, what am I? Okay, we'll go back to that. So psychology, which is, of course, I'm rambling on about, is studying the animal. Psychology has no power to tell us about the spiritual side of us. Again, as a believer, I think that side is very real. It's also very mysterious. But psychology is getting quite good at helping us understand, well, what about this other side, the animal part of us? So when you talk about religion, we can come from it like a spiritual side or a psychological side.
But as a person born with a brain that knows right from wrong, does that organ know right from wrong?
No. What is, so I don't want to get to, what is right from wrong?
That's where I was going. That's where I was going.
No, the brain doesn't
know. Like the person you said that doesn't speak English, I don't use the proper pronoun, or not pronoun, but like a whatever you call it, like a run-in sentence or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Say I do something different with grammar, they would know that it was wrong, and it's only wrong because me and you and the English teacher said it is.
Of course.
So now what's right from wrong?
Of course. We're making it up as we go along. That's the answer. That's the horrifying answer. We're making it up as we go along.
Literally. We're literally making it up. Now let's think of something. Let's think of something 50 years ago that was right and is not wrong yet. And one thing I can think of is when I first started building, we never put anybody's mailbox up. 30 years later, we don't build a house without putting their mailbox up. So that's different.
So these rules go in, and we say, okay, now you should do this, and it's only right. I should do this now. Right. We develop an internal.
And I know that's very minor, but maybe we should think of another example.
Let's get uncomfortable for just a second. Let's get uncomfortable for just a second. Look, right now, living in this country are millions of people who not very long ago, they went to the same kind of church you and I went to. And they prayed to the same God you and I prayed to, and they read from the same holy book that you and I read from, okay? They did that. Mm-hmm. They prayed. They went to church. They read the Bible, the book I read. And you know what else they did? They walked down hallways that said white and colored. They walked right into restaurants and ate that said no blacks allowed. Perfectly comfortable with the idea that black people should not be allowed to vote.
I've heard people say, my great-grandfather was a good person. He was good to his slaves. And I'm thinking, well, that's such...
Okay, but our point, remember our big point is, does the brain know?
He was a good person back then.
Jack. You know what the brain knows, Dee? Patterns. Look, I want to come back to the civil rights thing. Yeah. But here, if I release this object, which has mass, you know exactly what it's going to do. But the only reason you know what it's going to happen to it, that is, it's going to fall to the table, is because there's a pattern. Will this object fall to the table? The reality is, no one has any idea. But our sense of reality is that I'm stupid. Of course, it will fall, dummy. But the only reason you feel that that's what's real is because it's happened so many times.
Like that'd be like a magic trick. The card disappears. Our brains thinking that card's supposed to still be there.
Yeah, and you know it hasn't really disappeared. You know the person is really skillful and artful, but it hasn't really disappeared. Sometimes in class I give the example. If right now the door opened and a human being levitated into the room and levitated down to the seat,
that wouldn't fit a pattern.
Just sit there and let that. Here's the thing, it seems absurd because we say, well, that's not going to happen. Whoa. How do you know that's not going to happen? Right. You have lived 55 years knowing that doesn't happen, it never has happened, it never will happen. And if it does, it's some sort of trick.
My brain says it doesn't fit a pattern.
You have never seen something other than that pattern. But guess what? 2-year-olds don't know that. That's why they jump off of the top of the bookshelf. Because they don't know it yet. They're not stupid. The brain needs patterns to draw conclusions. This is why I'm going to throw our hat over the wall because we got to come to this. This is why politically we're in trouble if the only thing we do is seek patterns that we like. Oh, you've got to be introduced to patterns that are not familiar to you. Why? We come to believe just one pattern we see because we're not omniscient. We're not God. We are trapped inside of our brain, which depends on what patterns have we been exposed to.
All right, but let me say this.
I'm a wild man. I'm flailing everywhere.
Let's say I throw a rock and I break a window, and I say, look at this window that's cracked, and I say, what does that remind you of? And you look at it and say, well, it's just a cracked window. And I say, can't you see that horse's head in the cracked window?
Yeah.
From now on, my guess is when you look at that window, you'll say, man, I see that horse's head.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to get that out of your brain.
That's right. Welcome to your brain.
Now that changed very simply.
Absolutely.
That wasn't years of seeing patterns. That was just in a suggestion, power of suggestion.
Oh, absolutely, which the brain is susceptible to.
But now, if the brain has been wired for, say, 50 years to think this way, how can one little suggestion cause it to think a whole nother thing when a person's trying to exercise every day, but he can't get that done, but now he can see this horse's head in the...
Okay, well, you're talking about two very different things there. The one about it's supposed to exercise, but you don't. Come to that in a second. But to the broken window that now looks like a horse's head to you, it goes to the point of your brain desires a pattern. Broken window looks like chaos. So it's nothing. It's nothing. Who cares? But now friend said, but hold on a second. Don't you see? Bang. Pattern. Whoa.
I've given the brain a pattern?
Yes. And it illustrates how intensely the brain wants a pattern. Because a broken window is just chaos. There's nothing to it. I don't care. It's not beautiful. How come you don't see in an art studio all different kinds of ways a broken window? It's nothing. It's not. We don't like that. We don't like that. I mean, a Jackson Pollock painting, the guy who throws paint on a canvas.
Yeah.
You know, most of us are like, okay, that's interesting. Oh, stupid. What is
He's making millions.
Of course, or he was.
Yeah.
Somebody else, his estate's making millions. So when they show you that horse head, boom, you can't forget. Oh, now I see the pattern. That's how.
So it's not that it's right or correct. No. It's that your brain
doesn't know correct.
Now it's accepted a pattern.
Our brains, Dee, are, I mean, one of the most important things that students can learn in a liberal arts education, if they learn nothing else, this would be enough. That our brains are so flawed at knowing what is correct, knowing what is right, knowing what is good, and even knowing what is good for us. Our brains don't even know what's good for us. Our brains will destroy us and search for what it wants. Your brain will destroy the host organism. Your brain will destroy you if you don't get a handle on it. Think about it as a teenager. Should we take a second? Let's you and I breathe for a second and think about it. If you have never had a chance to see a miracle before, behold, how am I alive? I bet you have similar experiences. I've had so many near-death experiences. My point being, thank God I'm somehow alive until I reached a point where I said, hey, to myself, stupid, what are you doing? Okay, who am I talking to when I had those conversations? Hey, stupid, what are you doing? Who is talking to whom in that? This is where we go to John Locke, a British philosopher, theory of the mind. Isn't this a strange thing? We are talking to
Who are you
ourselves.
Well, the Chinese
talking
say
to
it's,
ourselves.
the Chinese say it's chi. That's what they call
Yeah.
chi.
That's right. This life force.
That's not here.
Think about, where is that? How is it that I am talking to myself saying, I want that thing? No, don't do it. What a weird, what now? I want that thing, but then another part of me says, don't do it. Right? So this is, my brain will kill me until I learn to talk to myself and say, do this, don't do that. Go exercise, Jerome, to avoid a heart attack.
If you get
I
hungry,
hate exercise.
if you get hungry and want to eat, what's telling you to eat? Your stomach or your brain?
Okay. Well, both are telling you. Now, in the United States of America, where we have the problem of too much food, it's a habit, which is another huge rock in our life that we got to try to move and learn to master these habits, or they master us.
We haven't even gotten into habits.
Oh my gosh. Man.
Yeah, so keep going with that.
But a part of it is
say you hadn't eaten for 2 days and it's no longer you're trying
the
trying to
time
have a
we're-
habit. Does your brain tell you you're hungry, or is it your stomach?
your brain most of the time, because in a place where there's so much food, it would be different if we were in a different environment where there was only enough food for once every 3 days.
Let's say there was.
It would be our stomach telling us then. But in a place like the United States, where for most people, I do understand that there are food insecurities and many people don't have enough to eat. I am very aware of that and moved by that fact, something so basic as being able to just get food. But for most Americans, the abundance of food removes it from the I'm actually hungry and takes it much more to a ritual, a habit. Most people are just you're going out of the habit. Most of the time at lunch, you're not really hungry. What is it? I just haven't eaten in 3 hours. It's time to eat again. Just like the person who goes through the ritual of lighting up a cigar or cigarette. Part of it is the nicotine. Part of it is the experience of the chemicals. But a big part of it is removing the lighter out of my pocket, packing the cigarette, the feel of it
I've
between
noticed
my
most
fingers,
people
and
that
firing
smoke,
it up.
they'll take 5 minutes to light up.
Is that-
They'll
it is
take it
the-
out and they'll pack the
What's going
cigarette.
on? What the heck are they craving?
That's the habit.
It's the habit. The habit becomes the commander.
All right, so first comes that.
As Scripture says, you're going to be servant. Okay? There ain't no way out of
You
it.
got to serve somebody.
You are going to be a servant. Who you going to serve? And habits are a master. So the great news is you get to create your own master. But then once you create it, it is your master.
Now
Okay.
let's go even deeper. Let's say you're.
is great, man.
Let's say you're okay.
Have you done this before?
No, this discussion. let's say it's 11:30, and I'm going to go eat. Now, A, am I hungry? B, am I going because it's getting close to 12?
Yeah.
Or is it because my stomach's telling me it needs nourishment? Or is my brain telling me I need food?
Yeah. It is mostly your brain. It is mostly your brain saying, let's go to habit. Again, if you're eating regularly, you don't need food. You don't need food for 4 days. You got so much storage built up, and all of us do. As the average person in the United States, you don't need food for days. Now, you're going to feel hungry in your body, but a lot of that is habit, and a lot of your body's just saying, hey, it's noon, it's time to eat. So, no, most of it is not hunger.
Now,
I feel hungry.
now can your brain
You
control
feel- go ahead.
Can your brain control the habits?
Totally. But it is a lot harder to change than I think
Which
people
is harder to
appreciate.
change?
What do you
The
mean?
habit
Okay.
or the brain?
The brain is much harder to change. The brain is much harder to change. And depending on when the pattern was formed, what stage of your life the pattern was formed, and how long it's been with you, it is very hard to change. If the pattern was formed between birth and 10, because that's really foundational to how you see the world, that is really hard to change. So, for example, if you grew up in an authoritarian, if you were a female, let's say, a lot of literature on this. If you're a female, you grow up in an authoritarian home. Your father gives directives. Get me some tea. Turn off that light. Go to bed. It doesn't say, would you mind bringing me some tea? A request, right? Would you mind bringing me something to drink when you come? Do you mind cutting that light off?
So it's attitude, not language.
Well, language is a symbolic reflection of that attitude. Okay, so if your father was authoritarian, he's the boss, there's no questioning of the rules. Dad, can we change my time to 10 from 9? You're going to be in a lot of trouble, right? Because he's in charge. Okay, I'm not giving value to that. Remember, as a psychologist, we don't deal in values. We want to know about human behavior, right or wrong. That's for the theologians. We're about, why does that behavior happen? Okay, let's say a female grows up in that home. Man, as she reaches teenager, she says to herself, I'm getting out of here, and I'm never going to be around a person like that again. Maybe she's mad at her dad, the way he is. He never let her develop as a person. Finally, she breaks free. He's like, man, I'm out of there. I'll never be around a person like that again. I despise men like that. Guess what happens?
She wants to get comfortable, and she's only comfortable around
okay.
men that
let's say she's very bright, she's very determined. Here's what she does. She marries a guy not like her dad at all. There, Hammond's wrong. What a moron he was in class. I didn't marry a guy who's not like my dad at all. Ha! I win. Guess what we see over the next 7 to 10 years? Go ahead, do it. You know.
I'm thinking she's unhappy, and she wants to go to a guy she's mad at him because he's not authoritarian.
She's going to shape his behavior over time to where he's much more like her daddy. How is she going to do that? Without her knowledge and against her own will. He's going to come in one day, he's had a bad day. Can I do a scenario here?
Yeah.
He's going to come in one day, he's had a bad day. Things are going well, coming in. She's used to him greeting her. They discuss where they want to go eat. He comes in one day, had it, man. They've been married about 7 years. Work is not going well. She says, hey, babe, how was work? It was terrible. Get in the car. We're going to the restaurant. She's sort of shocked. What? He goes into the other room. She follows him there. What in the world is going on? Maybe he says, what's going on is we're going to dinner. Okay, babe. Let's talk about this. I don't want to talk about it. You want to go to dinner with me? You get in the car. Now that she's protesting, she's like, what are you doing? They're driving to wherever they're going. You don't talk to me like that. He doesn't say anything. They eat dinner. I don't understand why you're acting like this. Isn't that what our marriage is about, perhaps, she says. Because she married a guy not like her dad, and she doesn't like this pattern. And he says, bad day at work, confound it. And they drive home. She's mad at him. But you know what, dadgummit? She finds him attractive. She's mad at herself. He can't talk to her like that, but now she's attracted to him.
Because of the pattern?
Because of the pattern. And she doesn't want to. And he asks her, you want to go upstairs? And she wants to say, no! And maybe she even does. But then she goes up together and they're intimate. Hope I'm not going too far. Okay. Whoa, what in the world just happened? Why was she attracted to him in that moment? And she gets up the next morning and he says, hey, sweetheart, forgive me. It was just too much at work. And I apologize. That's not me. I didn't act myself. No, we'll talk about it later. He comes home that night, maybe the next night. He comes in the door. He's conciliatory. He says, I want to ask your forgiveness again. I'm sorry I got away from myself. That's not really me. I hope you know it's not me. Well, maybe I should hope so.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad that's not going to happen again.
That could actually be a turnoff to her.
Bing! And guess what? That night, she doesn't particularly want to, go upstairs.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to. Because the whole thing of attraction, not attraction, sexual arousal, all of that is very mysterious. Where does that come from? What is that? But she finds that night, no, none of that is there. As a matter of fact, I think I'll sleep on the couch, maybe she says, or maybe you should. I just need a little more time.
Now he tries to get nicer and exacerbates the issue.
Now it's kind of a cartoon example. But what we do over time is when we're in a situation that's not familiar to us, against our own will, without our permission, our brain will figure out ways to shape people so they behave the way that we want. So this is why you see in literature, you ask women who've been married 10 or more years, whether they like their father or not, is your dad a lot like your father? The majority? Yes.
The first year they'll say no.
Oh, no. Nothing like my father.
Now does the father...
And men are the same way, by the way. We're the same way.
Do they become like their fathers? Or
sometimes when they marry them, they're like their father.
Or do they become that way?
The person, the husband or the wife, shapes that spouse. That is the power of the brain's need for familiarity, patterns, understanding.
Not right or wrong, just familiar. What's familiar?
Right. The brain does not know right or wrong. It does not know if I can refer to Scripture. Think about how many times the Bible's saying you don't know nothing. Think about what God calls us the dumbest. He used a euphemism of a sheep, which today we think is, that's sort of nice and sweet, a sheep. No, he essentially said, you're a dumb animal. I love you, but you're stupid, right? And you are trapped inside of this thing. And in fact, all of Scripture is about saying, don't you understand what you are? What is the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life? It's all this wiring. What is Apostle Paul talking about when he says, I must die to this flesh? He's not talking about just, I don't need to overeat, I don't need to be sexually promiscuous. No, he's talking about every day I get up, this thing wants something. It wants patterns, it wants reward, it wants to avoid being punished. And it is driving me in the direction it wants to go. But I have to get up and say, no, we're going a different direction. No, I want pleasure.
It's hard to tell your brain that when we haven't even necessarily defined what's right or wrong.
And even more than that, before we even know that's what's going on. I mean, when you're growing up, nobody hands you a manual. I mean, some people think of the Bible as a manual to life. Well, it's not a very clear one. If you ask me, it's kind of hard to decide.
It's really hard it's hard to see a lot of patterns.
Exactly.
But
when you're growing up, you don't even know what kind of fight you've been born into. You don't even know the fight you're in with yourself. You think the fight is with everybody out there. No, man. The fight is you with you. But no, you don't know that until you almost, destroy yourself a couple of times. You realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What am I doing to me? Some people never realize that, of course. And they go heedless into destruction. And our heart breaks for them that they don't figure out, oh man, I've got to get control of my brain, my body, my drives. I can't just let it run off wherever I want to go. It will destroy me. It's kind of crazy. This is what Sigmund Freud called the death instinct. He said, you not only have an intense instinct to be alive and experience life, think about yourself. You have a self-destructive instinct. What the heck is that? And as a matter of fact, when we are old enough and we can reflect a little bit, we realize, what am I doing? Not only in terms of physical ways, but all kinds of ways. I mean, like the word you brought up, exercise. The jury is back in. We know we should all be exercising.
Or is that just the current train of thought? Because you go back 50 years ago and it was keep the heart calm. Yes. Now we're trying to stress the heart.
But now, man, a whole other door opens up.
Now we've added some science.
Oh, it's so good, man. Yes, Dee.
Now this other level.
Now is where we have this amazing little toolbox called scientific methodology, which, by the way, arises out of not just my opinion, but many, many scholars' opinion, arises out of a Christian worldview that our God is a natural, orderly, lawful God. The universe He's created is lawful and can be studied. That's a Christian worldview. That's a godly worldview. And scientific methodology arises out of that. Let's go look for patterns. That's what science is. Science is, let's look for patterns and let's be aware that the brain is faulty.
That's all science is.
This is what it is. And so the tools of science are, what are the steps we can take to come to the highest level of confidence that here comes a huge word in science, understand something. we casually use the word understand all that. Oh yeah, I understand what that is. I understand what that is. I'm not mocking that. I'm just simply saying casual usage just means we know what that is.
We know what that pattern is? Could we
It's
say
somewhat,
that?
yeah, sort of, whether it's a shallow or deeper. Scientific meaning of the word understanding is we know it so well that we know the formula that leads to that occurrence of that thing.
To the pattern.
That's right. And that means knowing it at an engineering level.
Right.
So when we say we
Not a suppose,
not kind of,
but
yeah,
actual.
we kind of know what that is. No. As a matter of fact, in certain cases, we know it so well that if we can kind of control the elements that go into it, we can control the outcome. So we can, for example, an area we can't do that is, we can't do anything about an eclipse, a lunar eclipse. We can predict it.
We can see the pattern.
We can see the pattern, we know it very well, but we can't manipulate it. But we can manipulate heart disease. We know that pattern so well, we can say, do this and this and this, and we can control to a degree an outcome on that. So science is looking to study things in this universe, including people. That's what psychology is. Can we study things in this universe so long and understand the patterns so well that we can actually, with great accuracy, predict its occurrence? So people can tell you when the tide is going to come in 1,000 years from now at this exact time, 1,000 years from now.
But I can't tell you what I want to eat for lunch tomorrow.
Okay? Because human beings are so unbelievably complex. So objects in our universe do not change when they're being studied. Some people theorize they do, but when a human being knows it's being studied, it changes, making it really tricky to study and get a good understanding.
Yeah.
So what's taking us so long to understand people better is because it's really hard to study people.
Yeah, if you went to a place and they were going to study my sleep, I wouldn't be able to go to sleep at night.
No. If we wanted to study your real opinions about things that were kind of politically sensitive, it'd be kind of hard.
It'd be hard.
It'd be kind of hard. You would say, oh, no.
I'd be giving it in a biased way that I thought you would something, so we couldn't study that.
That's right. I couldn't get an engineering
You couldn't study
level.
my sleep unless you...
No. And think about all the other things. Hey, Dee, we want to we meet you as a young man. You're 15, 16. Dee, we're really interested for human progression and understanding what love is. So we really want to study you falling in love and being in love. So do you mind if we follow you around and watch how you fall? What are you, crazy? No, this is never going to happen. But we really want to know, what is love? How does that work? But think how hard it is going to be for us to come to an understanding. What is this thing? Because I don't want you studying me. You don't want me studying you. I want to fall in love in the privacy of my own life. So human beings are really difficult to study, especially stuff that's important to us.
It's like giving a urine sample and you can't pee in the cup because you know they're going to study it. In other words, you're not going natural. You're trying to go to the bathroom.
It's forced. It's a little uncomfortable. Right, and so
same thing.
When it comes to behavior,
you can't study it.
Yeah, except your urine doesn't change when it's under a microscope, but human beings change when they are sort of figuratively under a microscope. It's just very hard. We're tricky. We are tricky.
So
tricky
how do they do these studies?
Well, you have to set up studies where you're tricking the person. Where you're sometimes, for example, you'll say, "Hey, Dee, we would like to study how much coffee you like." I'm sort of theatrically. So we want to know, do you like coffee? Well, really, what we want to study is
what kind of cup I use.
That's right. What kind of cup do you reach for?
Yeah.
So you'll be more focused on,
I go for one that's black.
Okay, that's right. So if we even wanted to find, so what we have to do oftentimes in psychology is we have to set up an experiment so you don't really know what it is we're studying. And oftentimes because...
The animal tricking the animal.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, because our minds are so flawed when we look at information that should be clear, we have biases. Let's go into that area. That we have to do what's called a double-blind test, where even the scientists don't know. You have a third scientist who doesn't tell either of the two doing the study what he's really studying.
Now, where do our biases? Because we studied traits, or I call it DNA.
Yeah.
DNA, nurture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Habits.
Yeah.
Now, when do we get our biases?
Okay.
Do we get our biases when we're 1 to 7, or do our biases change based on the patterns that our brain sees?
They can change, but the older we get, and depending on what the environment around us is like, because remember, I don't want to go too far down this trail, but human beings are fundamentally wired to get away from things that are painful and to move to things that are pleasurable. So that
goes into Tony Robbins.
Yeah, no question.
He does the which is worse, eating the donut, not having the donut, or weighing 300 pounds. Which one do you see the most pain in, right?
Right. You got to come to see the pain, the greater pain.
So do people more levitate towards things that create? Does our brains look at something? And now when I think of my brain, I'm thinking, my brain's saying, does this hurt more or does this feel better?
Yes.
But you're saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's looking for a pattern.
Well, it is looking for a pattern, but now we're on a slightly different topic where we're saying, okay, here's another type of wiring in the brain, which of course is going to interact with our desire for patterns. We are fundamentally wired to move toward pleasure and to move away from pain. Now, that gets more complex as we get older.
Maybe we know that through patterns.
Well, there's no question.
So the patterns come first. Looking for patterns comes first.
That's right. So one of the patterns is, does that hurt me? Does that make me feel good? And we automatically, unless we control ourselves, will always move toward what's pleasurable and what's away from pain. Now, not just physically, not just in terms of appetite, but in terms of social rejection. A very powerful tool in sort of the cultural toolbox is rewarding and punishing you. And we can do this in all kinds of ways. We can give you the job interview or not give you the job interview. We can pay you in all kinds of ways or punish you in all kinds of ways. We can make eye contact with you or not. We can invite you to the party or not. A society has thousands of ways to reward you if you're acting the way we want you to, or to punish you if you're not acting the way we want you to. And that is extraordinarily powerful. Let's go back to an earlier part of the conversation. When Martin Luther King Jr. says for the first time, I don't think it's right that I can't go into that restaurant. The society is so, how do I describe it? The majority of the society is so in a pattern of thinking, no, that's the way life is. Y'all go there, we go there. But then this guy says, I don't think that that's correct. Here's what society does. What it does to all of us, Dee. Society says to him, stop saying that. Society says that to all of us. There's words right now you and I can't use. Quick aside. You and I are in the guy club. Just be sort of simplistic about this. There's all kinds of words as guys. We probably shouldn't use those words. Like what? Okay? Like the word lovely. This is not really a guy word.
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you this is a cute shirt you got.
Thank you. Oh, I say this to my female friends sometimes. They say, well, how is your little job going?
You're not going to say that to me.
Okay, don't. This is not. Hey, that is how females talk to. Do you see what I'm saying? Well, hold on. Right or wrong? Is that right? Is it wrong for a guy to say lovely? Jerome, what a lovely jacket you have on. Hey, Dee.
I mean, I'm not going to say that, am I?
You might say a handsome jacket. You might say a grotesque jacket.
Odds are I'm not even going to comment on it.
And the reason why, yes, okay, good. You're not even going to comment on it. Why not?
I don't
because
even
guys
notice.
Don't do that. Hold on, where the crap did you get that from, guys? We're both 55 years old, and all of our life, our society has said, do this and don't do that. Well, I'm going to try that. One of my sons, when he was little, his favorite color was pink and purple. His brother said to him, you can't like that, pink and purple. Right? And so we had a conversation. Okay, So, okay. My point is, as early as 2, our society, or earlier than that actually, our society is saying, do this and don't do that. So we grow up thinking, no, that's my natural preference. Is it? I don't think so. I think you've been hammered into compliance by your gender group, which says, D, you better think like this. You better talk like this. You better not get out there and say you prefer this thing. That's what women want, son. And we got all kinds of names to call you if you step over there outside of the guy rules. Okay.
Now the guy rules, they didn't decide on them. That was taught to them through nature.
Well, a combination. So in that given time, right? So this will bring us back to Dr. King. People are saying, this is how you behave, this is how you behave. Guys don't express their emotions, men shouldn't hug. You know, if you go to the Navy, your father shakes your hand at the bus station and sends you off. He doesn't say, I love you. That's not what men do. Mm-hmm. But over time, culturally, we can see change. So Dr. King, in a culture that is just understood, blacks go here and whites go here. This guy stood up and said, I don't think so. And what did the culture do? Shut up. But he was pressed upon. We might say the Lord. We might say some other forces. Okay. Culturally, psychologically, you know, from his church, from his people, from his community. Okay. But he kept saying, everybody, I think we've got to change this. And the culture got louder and louder and louder, telling him, shut up, shut up, shut up. And got more and more intense, as cultures do. When you don't obey, whatever culture it is, your guy culture, Bradley County culture, Southern culture, Baptist culture, it tells you, D, you better behave like this. And if you don't, we have all kinds of ways to punish you. And guess how you live your life? You got it. You don't even know you're doing it. Do I say it again? Without your permission and sometimes against your will, your brain says, let's go that direction. What direction? Of don't use the word lovely. You might say, I hate the word lovely. Why do you hate it? Where'd you get that from? I don't know. It's just a stupid word. It's not a guy word. Where the crap did you get that from? Right? You don't even know where you got it from. It just is not a guy word, Jerome. Says who?
The guy that couldn't speak English didn't even know what it meant.
He didn't even know. There's no right or wrong. Where the heck did you get that? Where did you get that? Okay.
But
your society told you. Your society told you. So Dr. King, one of the reasons we celebrate him is he did something unbelievably hard against a majority culture, not because he was a jerk, not because he wanted his way, because something, I would say the Lord said to him, you will be, if you will let me use the word, I hope it doesn't bother you, you're going to be my prophet. And you're going to stand up and say, the way that all y'all think the world is right, it's wrong. And I'll stand here until you shoot me on a balcony in Memphis. That's the only way I'm allowed. I think Dr. King would say, I'm not allowed to shut up. He won't, you know, the prophet in the Old Testament said, it is a fire shut up in my bones. Jeremiah said, I wanted to be quiet. And when I tried to be quiet, it was like a fire in my bones. I guarantee you, Dr. King, if we could put him in that chair, would say, exactly. I wasn't allowed to shut up. I had to keep talking. But look what our culture did. Our culture said, if you won't shut up, we will shut you up. We all in our bones know, yeah, man, if you don't obey the rules, you get punished. So naturally, we move toward the things where our culture says, now, there you go. That's better. Now, here's your rewards. We like you. You get invited. Here's this job. Now we'll reward you. You're acting like we like.
Our current likes.
That's right. And this is what's so hard about cultural change is the people who begin to stand up and say, hold on a minute, I think that's wrong. Man, they get hammered. Whether it's in your church, you know, whether it's in your family. Whoa, let your mind go there for a second. Think about that guy who first stands up and says, this ain't right. Hold on just a second. Imagine the threat of isolation. You're the black sheep. Now, you know, every family's got to have one. Whoa, man, once you're the black sheep, everybody else is relieved because all the ills go on you, you know. And where does that come from? You're not doing it the way, you know, we are the Burris's, doggone it. We do it this way. What if your boy said, I don't think so, Dad. I think I'm a Democrat now. No, I'm playing. I don't know your political affiliation. Don't want to look at you unless you give it away somehow by putting a mask on. I don't know what you can do. No, man, we are wired, D, every day to get up, move toward rewards, and move away from punishments. But as responsible citizens, you know, as educated people, our culture needs us to be thinking people, to say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to think for myself. Is that right?
Well,
Okay.
it goes back to this. Let's just
All
take
right.
it down to something with my feeble brain as picking out a tie.
Okay, good.
I'm watching the I'm watching the Odd Couple the other day, and they got
old
these
show
wide,
with okay.
Yeah, they got the wide
70s
Yeah,
show?
they got the wide ties.
Do these people watching this know what you're even talking about? The Odd Couple. It's the show.
Yeah, the what's his name? Klugman.
Yeah, Jack Klugman, and I don't remember the other guy's name. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so it's these two guys. Personalities totally they live together in a park.
It was the 70s. They had wide ties,
big old ties. That's right.
and then they went small.
Yeah. Okay.
Then they went large. Then they went small.
Yes. But now we're going to come back to where we began. Well, how is that?
And then they go to bow ties.
Okay.
And then me and you, neither one of us have a towel. If this was the 70s,
Okay.
we'd be both sitting here with a towel.
And here's what happens. Oh man, we're going to come all the way back to where we were before. The beautiful people. The beautiful people. Yes, D. We put them up in front of us. Their tie goes thin. They're beautiful.
That's right.
They're smarter. They're
ties.
better. I want to be
Their
like
ties
them.
wide. Now they're ugly.
I want that. I want to be like that. This is what advertising is. Out of psychology, a guy named John Watson, early 20th century, gets thrown out of the Psychological Association because he's teaching at Johns Hopkins. He has an affair with his laboratory assistant. They're doing a very well-known experiment with little Albert and creating an association where this little child who was in the hospital would learn to hate white animals. Anyway, John Watson gets kicked out of psychology. So what is he going to do with his life now? You know where he goes? Advertising. And you know what he does? He takes what he knows about the human brain and he takes it to advertising. Advertising before John Watson, you know what it was? Here's my bar of soap. My bar of soap has 15% lye, 9% this, and 6% sodium.
Carpetbaggers.
Please buy my soap. That's advertising. Here is my tire. My tire has good rubber. Please buy my tire. Here's what John Watson does. He knows the brain wants what is good, what is pleasurable, and want to move toward that. You know what he does? He takes beautiful people and he says, hi, I'm a beautiful person. Look at this soap I really like. Be like me and buy this soap. And he totally changes advertising. So now what we have is taking something that we care about.
And associating it.
And you got it. You put that thing together with the product. Pretty soon I walk in, the model is not near the product, but I walk in and I say, I don't know, Michelin tires are just better.
Like the Marlboro Man and cigarettes.
100%. The Marlboro, everybody knows that's better. How's it better? It's better, stupid.
It's manly.
Like, how is it better? Yeah, it's manly. Like, in what way?
It's not lovely.
And if you drill too far down when people just say it just is, well, how do you know? Shut up. What are you, a college boy or something?
Yeah.
Right? We don't know how we know. And we get kind of mad. It just is. Everybody knows it is, D. My gosh, man. I'm being, again, sort of dramatic.
Yeah.
But this is what happens when we say, well, what do you mean it's more manly? Let me give you an example from my world. If your next door neighbor says, hey, my son got into Harvard College up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Wow, Harvard, whoa, awesome. Good, pause. What's awesome about it? It's Harvard. Good, terrific. What's great about Harvard? It's Harvard, dummy, Harvard. Yeah, I hear you, but is it a great school? Yeah, it's great. Like how? In what way is it great? Because it's Harvard. Okay, pause. This happens all the time. And why do people think that about Harvard? Because Harvard has won the branding war. All you know is Harvard is great. What's their debt ratio up there? What are you talking about? Okay, what is their PhD count? I don't know, Jerome.
How many people got a job when they left?
Jerome, this is stupid. I'm sort of playing both sides of the thing. We don't know beans about that. All we know is they're great. We don't know how they're great. Okay, how do we have that knowledge? These psychological techniques. Again, without your awareness and against your will, an association was formed. So forget about Harvard. All we know is we go in the grocery store. Everybody knows Tide detergent's the best. How do you know Tide's the best? It's the best, stupid. Tide, moron. It's the best. Like how? Just get away from me. I'm just get Tide. Okay. How has our brain come to that conclusion? Dun, 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 dun. The people in advertising know how your brain... Why has Apple won? How did Steve Jobs win? Because he hired, this is literally true, platoons of psychologists.
There may be 5 other phones better than that. Who knows?
Please, of course you know there are. He won. Why? Because they sat in office and he talked over and over and over with his engineers and his psychologists. How does the brain, why doesn't this come with a user's manual? How in the world did they do that? You don't have to have a user's manual for this? A supercomputer? Because they understand, what does your brain do automatically? What does it want? When you want something to go away, you just want to swipe it away, like you throw stuff off a table. So how did they design your phone? You want to go, you throw it off the table. That's right.
That's right, yeah.
Swipe it away. That's no accident. That's how they won. Why? All these things that were going on, I am going on and on about, without your permission and sometimes without your awareness, all day, every day, your brain is doing it.
So now we know the steps of the brain.
Do we?
Of what causes? No.
I've covered the waterfront.
Now that we know what causes the brain to do what it does, how do we?
Isn't it crazy to think? Wait a minute, this thing's inside of me creating reality, and I'm not giving it permission to do it. It's just doing it.
I'm not even sure how I'm gonna get home tonight.
Man,
I'm just gonna drive home with you thinking, am I going home because of culture, my biases, my habits?
And you should. Now, it shouldn't paralyze you, but I want to pause right there on a relatively serious point. I would to the Lord that everybody in the country could understand the degree to which we're not fully in control of our sense of reality.
Now,
okay,
are we putting some people in jail forever because of their sense of reality?
Yes, 100% you are. We are doing it all the time. Yes.
I mean, now that's a whole nother.
It is a whole
now
nother.
Now we're a society. Now as a society, we're going to rule.
Yes.
On your culture, your biases,
that's right.
Your habits, your.
Totally true. And think about. I mean, when you begin to think, wait a minute, another person just like me gets to rule that this is what's right and what's wrong when the brain didn't even know what's right or wrong. This is why over thousands of years, Dee, it has taken us so long to figure out, don't enslave women. Okay, Jerome, hold on. How did you get to that? You don't even have to know much history at all to know how we have treated people who are not in power. By the way, go to any every single kind
of... There's another thing that happened in the 60s, right?
I mean, ask the Irish what it was like to live in the United States in the first quarter of the 20th century. Ask the Irish. Holy cow. My point there being, every culture, every kind of people on the planet has been enslaved, mistreated, slaughtered. Humans are horrible to humans. We are all horrible to one another. So that's one lesson to be learned. But here's another lesson. We are crawling our way forward, groping our way forward as a species, trying to figure out how ought we to behave. Just in the last 100 years, we let women vote. What the crap are we doing, man? That seems so stupid to us now. We just figured that out. And by the way...
That was in the 60s, right?
And just this country.
When did women get the right to vote?
Well, this is the first half of the 20th century. We've just crossed the 100-year mark. As a matter of fact, did you know that Tennessee was the final state to ratify that amendment to give women the right to vote?
He's buried in Riceville.
And we were just...
The guy that had the last...
We ratified it. Went the whole summer, nobody voted on it, and Tennessee finally said... Okay, let's do it. And we made the amendment.
But the deciding vote, who is we? The guy that made the deciding vote is buried in Riceville.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. His name's Burns, I think. That's another story. But
we are groping our way forward as human beings to try to figure out how we ought to behave. So back to a question you've asked a couple of times.
How-
You mean the brain doesn't know right from wrong? No, it doesn't. Why shouldn't I murder you and get your stuff? That would be better for me. Pause just a second. Jerome, say these alarming things, but I want to. It would be great for me to murder you and take your stuff. That would be great for me. Do you think how long it took for us to figure out, don't kill your neighbor even though you'll get his grain? Because later when it comes to winter and you guys need to huddle together, you're dead. Think how long it took to figure that out.
That was a cultural decision.
Yes. Right, but my point is, we don't know that automatically. I should kill you because you got some great stuff around here that I want. So how am I going to get that? Dee, can I have your stuff? No, you can't have my stuff. There, now I got it. Oops, except in the long term, this is really a terrible idea that I should kill you because we need each other. I need your talent, you need my talent. Really would be better if we're a community.
We can fight a line together better.
Exactly. Now that seems to us automatic today. Yeah, duh, Jerome. Everybody knows that. Wrong. Wrong. You don't have to be a history student at all to know we have been crazy to each other in the way that we. It's what makes America a political miracle. A political miracle, right? Where we say to each other, you know what's better if I don't have all the power. This is the first time in known human history a nation has said, you know what? We better share the power. No one has said that. To the contrary, the whole world for all history has said, no, you get all the power you get and you hoard it and get more and more and more. Doesn't that seem like a great idea? But look what we have proven in just 240 years. Look what we've proven. This way is better.
Didn't the Israelites ask God for a king?
Yes, right. That's right. And he says, no, don't do that.
You don't need a king.
No,
they said, no, we want to be like the other countries.
And they're warned by the prophet, he will send your sons to war. He will take all of your treasure. He will grab your land. We don't care. That's what we want.
What were they prior to that?
What was what?
What were the Israelites prior to having a king?
Well, they were a theocracy. They depended on God as their leadership. They had prophets who came and said, this is what God wants.
A theocracy.
A theocracy, right. God is going to be our king. And so the way that worked was the prophet came and said, okay, this is what God wants you to do.
Then you'd have to say, is he a real prophet?
That's true. That's right. And that's why the penalty was so severe. If you come and you're not, you better make dang sure you heard from him. Because if you're not, you're going to die.
How would you know if he's not?
If it doesn't, what you say doesn't come true. So the prophet comes and says, thus says the Lord God, do X or Y is going to happen. And now, if they say, I don't think so, we're not going to do X, and Y doesn't happen, they're going to see, you're a false prophet, you're dead.
So if I was a prophet and God told me something, I'd say, hey, just in case I'm wrong, tell me one more time so I'll make sure.
Okay, you must be reading the Old Testament because that's exactly what prophets do because they know, God, okay, I'm going to go tell them this.
Yeah.
But, oh, man, you better come through. And so, exactly, you read through the Old Testament, prophets say, okay, I know you said that, but I'm going to put this fleece out. Make the ground wet and the fleece dry. Okay, God does it. Okay, God, you did that, but reverse it now. Make the fleece wet and the ground dry. And God does it. What is that prophet doing? He's triple checking. Did you really say that?
Was that a true prophet, what you're told?
Yeah.
Which one was that?
Oh, now my Old Testament.
Because they wanted to make sure.
They wanted to make, was it Gideon? I think it was Gideon.
I think when he
was putting his army together, you were just checking
Gideon's
to see my
army.
Old Testament knowledge. Yeah. I hate when you do that, man. You already knew the answer. You're just checking.
But
I think it was Gideon, and he said, God, are you sure?
Yeah.
Let me do these little tests. God's not mad at him.
Gideon wasn't known as a doubter. He was just known as, they never put Gideon as a doubter.
No. Well,
He wasn't like a doubting Thomas.
Okay.
It's almost like Gideon got away with double checking.
Think about, this is so great. How many hours can we go? Think about...
They'll lock us up.
We've already jumped over to religion and spirituality.
We'll start a whole new mental problem.
But let me go to the New Testament now, and the character's name, I forget, Zephaniah, or... Remember the guy, it's John's dad, John the Baptist, his father, what will be his father. He goes into the temple. It's his turn to serve in the temple. Remember this? This is New Testament now. New Testament, D, is the part of the Bible we feel like.
Yeah, the new covenant.
Okay.
That's what
John's
we feel
father
like.
goes in to the temple. It's his turn to serve. Sorry to mess with that. He goes into the altar. You already know what happened. I hate when you're ahead of me.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm
He goes
with
in,
you.
and who's standing at the altar?
Go ahead.
Gabriel, the angel.
The angel, yeah.
And he says, hey, John's father, I don't remember, hey, Tom. I don't remember his name was. Hey, Belteshazzar, don't be alarmed. You're going to have a son, and he's going to be the prophet of God, and he's going to go before the Messiah. What does John's father say to him? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You walk into this room, D, and Gabriel's sitting in the corner. Hey, D, been watching you a while. Good man. Hey, I got some good news for you. This thing's going to happen. What has to be in your mind for you to say, hey, yeah, thanks. How can I be sure that's going to happen? Which is what John's father says. You're staring at Gabriel, this creature, and he says, this is what God says is going to happen. And you say, how can I be sure? And remember, Gabriel is, according to Luke, is a little bit ticked at him, and he says, I tell you how you know. My name's Gabriel. I stand before God Almighty. And you're not going to be able to speak another word until your son is born. How's that? Is that enough for you? And sure enough, his father can't speak, and he comes out of the temple, and he can't, and he's gesturing, and they ask, what's the boy's name going to be? And he writes in the thing, John. And they're like, John? Where does that come from? Okay. The point is, what was my point? I don't know. The point is, yes, to these prophets, they witness these incredible messages, but we are human beings. We have a brain, and our brain says, my wife can't have a baby. Just like Mary. How can I have a baby? Gabriel goes to Mary as well later. John's cousin, Christ, Jesus. But Mary, okay, Elizabeth, cousins. You're going to have a baby. Whoa, here's Gabriel. But we're still human beings. We are both spiritual. She later rejoices, but at first she kind of double clutches. That can't be. Why doesn't she say, wow, yes, God has said it will be automatically? Because you're a human being too. And that pattern don't work. What pattern? I've never slept with a man. You can't have a baby if you don't sleep with a man. Pattern. Even with an angel, according to Scripture, standing in front of you saying, guess what my name is? Gabriel. As far as we know, the top angel is in this hierarchy of angels from Scripture. Yeah. I'm the man. And guess what I'm telling you? This is going to happen. That's never happened before. This is the intensity of what our brain does. This is the fight we have, D, to sort of be a human, but also a child of God. This is the fight that Apostle Paul is describing in Scripture of this war. Remember in Romans where he says, the things I want to do, why don't I do those? And doggone it, I want to do these other things, but I don't do them. What is my problem?
What about when the Bible says, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin.
Okay. Man, it's like you...
I mean, that was...
you throw open these doors, and it's about a 4-week journey down that room. Okay.
But I mean, that we have to play that into it.
You have to play that in it. And this is where, going back to the thing where you say, doesn't the brain know right from wrong? No. Humans, we don't know what is right and wrong in what terms. What's right and wrong for me? What do you mean by right and wrong? What's right and wrong for you?
Or the baseball team?
What's right and wrong for who? No.
Or the baseball team?
That question, what is right and what is wrong?
You know what I'm saying by the baseball team? It doesn't have to make sense. It's just, are we doing right? By whatever standard. Yeah.
What standard? What standard are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right or wrong, we should kill these people because they're evil? We went and killed the Nazis. Let me just jump around wildly. Who the heck do we think we are killing them?
It's just our opinion.
They shouldn't have killed the Jews. Why not? I mean, I hope I'm going to be in real trouble there. Well, I'm posing a fanciful question, a grotesque question. Who is saying that's wrong? Who's making this stuff up? You know, the brain organically as an organ in the body. What is right and wrong? What the heck does that mean? We're making that up, man. We're making that up. Right and wrong. Is it right for somebody to be worth $100 billion?
And this guy's trying to buy diapers?
This guy over here, kid, eats every third day? What's wrong with that? We don't know right from wrong. Of course, this is what Scripture. I have, without your permission, I keep dragging religion into it, but it's such a part of who I am and how I see the world. We cannot figure out what's right or wrong, and of course, this is what God tells us over and over and over. You can't find your rear end with both hands.
Now we bring religion in here, and I do too. Is that because of our bias, our culture? Or our upbringing?
Yeah, I've got a great quote.
Because that's complicated.
Well, let me give you this.
Or is it because of our belief?
All right, I'll answer that, but I want to give this anecdote first. Many years ago, the late Peter Gomes, Gomes, Peter Gomes, passed away now. He was the chaplain of Harvard, and I saw him in a debate with a gentleman whose religion was Muslim. A wonderful debate between these two men, very civil, very educated men. Dr. Gomes, Peter Gomes, he was confronted with a similar argument where his opponent in this debate, it was supposed to be a debate, said, Peter, we know enough now sociologically to know you were raised in a Baptist home. Your parents were Baptist. You went to a Baptist church. You became a Baptist minister. And so you are a Baptist, you are a Christian because that's the kind of home you were raised in. There are plenty of studies sociologically for us to know that's how it works. If you were raised in a Muslim home, you would have become a Muslim. And there's no way to dispute this. Here's what Dr. Gomes' response was. You are absolutely right. I was raised in a Christian home, what happened to be a Baptist denominational home. I was raised in that, and so for that reason, I became a Christian. But I remained a Christian because I met Christ, he said. And I thought it was such a brilliant response. I've never heard it surpassed in terms of its argumentative power. That absolutely, the home that you're raised in is going to greatly influence what you start out as. But what you ultimately become is going to be much more complex.
Boy, we could debate that for a while.
Okay, yeah, man.
Because
you get into tricky ground. What Gomes says, Dr. Gomes says, but I stayed a Christian because let's pause.
Maybe he did. Maybe he
really
didn't.
Get in trouble
maybe
because there's a whole lot
maybe
of nonsense.
Maybe his brain wanted to see a pattern of religion.
Well, hold on a second. Let me hold Christianity. Let's hold it there for a second. Because we can have a really good and slightly dangerous conversation. Dangerous meaning we might get in trouble with our subgroups.
Or with ourselves.
There's been a whole lot of nonsense go on in my denomination. I don't know about you. But however long you want to stay here, and let's talk about the pain and stupidity. Because all of human beings, we are groping our way forward trying to find out what's right. In my denomination of birth and what is currently my denomination, we made a lot of dumb decisions. We kicked people out for wearing wedding bands. We threw people out of our denomination for wearing jeans. Hold on, wait a minute, I can take it up. For drinking Coca-Cola, we asked people to leave our denomination.
Now you go to Lee. You work at Lee.
Yeah,
I remember driving through Lee when I was 16. And the women had, the girls had...
We played basketball. What are you talking about? If you played a sport for Lee in the 60s, you had to, in the 70s even, you had to wear long pants.
And if I drive through there tomorrow, it almost looks, I can't even use the words.
Okay, so we get these swings of the pendulum. No question about it. And in a free society, one of the hallmarks of a free society is the citizens of that society have these wild swings out here until they figure out, as a culture, let's don't do that. That doesn't work. If you're in a dictatorship, the dictator says, you're not allowed to do that or I'll kill you. But in a free society, we have the ability to say, we're going to experiment.
We want wide ties.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, I know it's too simple, but
no, you're totally right.
We like a wide tie.
Okay, let's do another one. Let's do drug use in the 70s. So we
60s.
That's
when they really didn't know they were bad.
That's right. So what happened? We're not going to work. We're going to drop out, drop in. All these slogans.
Remember when they had the square and you looked through it and whatever you could see was be free?
No, I don't know.
Oh yeah, the 60s.
Signs everywhere. Signs.
Well, in the 60s they'd wear a square.
Okay.
And they'd look through the square and whatever they could see through the square was theirs. They could use it.
I've never heard
it was part
of
of the freedom thing.
So you got Haight-Ashbury where people are saying everything should be free. Let's drop out. Let's okay. So a free society. If you have a
San Francisco,
that's
Ashbury,
right.
yeah.
That's right. So I mean that's as San Francisco often is.
But that was
they're
the
the first
60s.
to experiment wildly with stuff. That was the 60s. So what goes on in a free society is that society says no, we're going to go over here and try this. If you've got a dictator, the dictator shuts it down. Like a lot of
or doesn't shut it down.
Or doesn't shut it down.
Yeah.
Whatever they
want, yeah.
Okay. But in a free society, within reason, without the society destroying itself, the people are allowed to go out here and experiment. And what you hope happens is we figure out that experimentation, that's not a good idea. So the wonderful people of the 60s figured out, when I've got an abscessed tooth, I really need my dentist to be there and be ready to go. When I want to withdraw $100 from the bank, I need them to be open.
Yeah.
What does that require? That requires people going to school, studying, going to dental school, graduating, practicing, and being ready for when I have a toothache. That requires my banker to study, to get up in the morning, have his coffee, get to the bank on time, and open the door.
And not let anybody look through the square and see if it was theirs.
That's right. So we can't all just love and live because I get toothaches and I need somebody to take care. In other words,
or we don't think so.
Until maybe we run into that problem. Until there's no gas, nobody is processing gasoline and building trucks to haul that gasoline and putting that gasoline at my gas station. So when I need gas to go to my party, oh crap. We realized, because we were allowed to go out here and suddenly, hey, where's the produce in the grocery store? Oh, we don't do that. We just have fun. We sort of realized, oh, I need to go to law school. And what you had coming into the 70s is all of those free livers.
A lot of them, that was the generation that brought about the most lawyers, I believe.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So 80% of the world's lawyers in the United States, and that's one example, they all realized, oh, this doesn't work actually. I kind of like reliability, predictability, middle class life. I like it. Well,
my
what does that
brain,
require?
maybe that's not even best. Maybe the brain just is more comfortable with that pattern.
With which pattern?
With a pattern of not chaos.
Not chaos. Not chaos.
Yeah.
So the pleasure of let's take drugs and let's have love and let's just be free. As pleasurable as that is, the pain of I can't get my money, I can't get my tooth fixed, I can't get my gasoline, and all the other things.
And this one was actually less chaos and more of a pattern.
That's right. And so we began to realize, oh, reliability, consistency, that's better than love.
Good looking woman and a nice phone. An association.
An association. So we begin to slowly learn, oh, chaos
go to
bad.
work, get money.
This is better. Oh, this is better. So
fix my tooth. Somebody's there, I fix my tooth.
That's right. And so then we slowly begin to realize, oh, well then what piece am I? Oh, I'm the guy who will repair your roof when it's got a hole in it. Oh, that's the role I can play. And so then we begin to slowly see this big, miraculous puzzle called the United States, a free society.
Now that brings me to this
totally different.
This is totally different.
Okay, do it.
So we have to assume, I think there's some studies that say if a collective body of people, that a collective group can come up with an answer more accurate than one person.
No, of course, yes.
So if you had to figure out how many beans are in a jar, one person would most likely be wrong than 100 people trying to guess. Some of them 100 would get it right, most likely than the one. So as a group,
Almost certainly.
so as a group,
Yeah.
is the idea. Some studies say that as a group, they land on the right decision.
That's right. Eventually, maybe not immediately.
As a whole, as a rule, the group lands on it. It's
is-
like if we were all getting ready to leave and say, I need a jacket, and 10 people say,
Let's just take our small town.
okay.
It is not possible for any person alive today to, in a unilateral way, in other words, I'm going to make all decisions. It is not possible for that person to hold all information in their mind. Not just factual information, but preferential information. So, for example, that person cannot at the same time know totally who Dee Burris is, what motivates him, what demotivates him, what will make him angry, and Jerome Hammond, what motivates him, what demotivates him. Now take the 100,000 or how many people we have in Bradley County. No one person can hold all that information in the mind to say, I know the decisions to make so that our town will flourish. It's impossible.
Impossible.
No one can do that. So what that means is we need as much representation around the table to say, okay, Dee, here's a part of the world that you know. Tell us your thoughts. All right, Jerome, here's a part of the world you know. Tell us your thoughts. And then kind of as a collective brain, we get a better idea of how do you see the world, you, and you. This is where the idea of diversity as a value comes from. Is it is impossible, Dee, no matter how smart you are, no matter how motivated you are, you can never think like somebody living in Montana. To a degree you can, but not enough to say, I know how to run your life.
I couldn't go down there and be a good city councilman in Montana.
Not alone.
Not alone.
Not alone you couldn't, but now what we got to have is, around the table, well, let's get a perspective from females. Let's get a perspective from males. Let's get a perspective from somebody in business. Well, what about somebody who's more of a teacher? What about somebody who thinks religiously? Now we have almost a brain, if it's done properly, that come together. All of those come together in sort of like a centralized brain. This is the power of many voices. This is kind of the big idea in the United States is if everybody can have a voice, now it's going to be wild. And for a while we're going to swing here, and a while we're going to swing here. This is the genius of our founding fathers, is to say nobody gets all power.
Now let's take that. The collective makes the right decision as a general rule over time. Correct.
That's the way. Over time, they will. That's right.
The witch hunts when was that they
Yeah,
killed all the witches?
that's right,
What was
that's
that town?
It's in it's up in
Carolina.
Massachusetts.
No, Carolina.
Oh,
What's the name of that?
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem. So they all together decided to kill the witches, and so the collective group make the wrong decision.
That's right.
But over time, we made the right decisions. There are no witches.
Over time. That's right. Over time.
So sometimes you have to get way back to say, oh, we made the right decision over this long period of time.
And we are human, and this is something for all of us in our country, not just you and I, not just people in this room, in our community, for all of us. You know, as they say sometimes, pump the brakes. You guys, we are so flawed in our correct perception of reality and what is right and what is wrong. As sure as, we feel so correct in our sense, I know what's right. I'm sort of, no, we don't. We're very flawed. And so we proceed with great caution. Okay, so for example, let's jump to the legal field. This is why the idea of due process is such a genius idea in the United States. Due process. I cannot just jump out there and say, you're a witch, kill him. No. Every person has due process.
That probably came out of that era. I'm guessing. I
Of
don't
course.
know.
What does that come out of? That comes out of first of all, a knowledge of history. When we look at the shameful track record we have as human beings of getting things right, it's horrendous.
We're not very good.
We would never trust ourselves. We would never trust ourselves with a decision. We would say, oh my gosh, we make horrendous decisions over and over and over again. What kind of mechanisms can we put in place to try to reduce the bad decisions? Okay, legally, one of those is due process. Well, we are going to have this unbelievably slow, methodical, thorough, in some ways maddening process where people are not going to be able to emotionally jump out there and get you killed.
Unless you have enough money.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother door open. You're right. I mean,
it's another thing.
But this is back to the horror of what we are as a species, and that we all have to be so aware and cautious. Look, I make bad decisions. I make horrible decisions. If we had a whole other broadcast, you would say, Jerome, walk me through your bad decisions. Oh my gosh. And I was the one making them. Nobody made me make them. I made them. Okay. But just as one illustration. So yes, we have these other horrible decisions that where if you have enough power, which is of course what money is, it's concentrated power. People, because we want reward. So if you will give me that reward, I'll do what you say. We let them off the hook. Man, that is a great whole another way to go. But yes, due process. Let me just put a bow on that. This is a miracle human development that says we recognize we tend to make disastrous decisions, especially when our passions are high and we're in a hurry.
And when we let our culture and our biases take over and our habits take over.
So what we got to get is somebody who's dispassionate, a judge. This person is not involved in his property.
Impossible.
I know, but that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, that's what we're shooting for.
Okay. So we got to get this person who you didn't steal their thing, you didn't break their thing, you didn't mess their thing up, and they're going to sit back and say, give me both sides and let me listen and try to make a judgment. It's totally flawed. There's so many things that got to be right. You got more power, you got more money, you get off the hook. We got to work on that more. But this is the beauty of America, is to say, guys, we must inch our way forward. Here comes the phrase, to a more perfect union. 240 years later, we are still crawling forward toward a more perfect union. The justice system is tragically flawed still. Yes, throw it out. No. It took us so long to get here. Do you realize how long it took us to get here?
I guess that's why they have amendments to the Constitution.
Yes, slow, man. And this is why politically, okay, let's take Congress, the structure of Congress. Why do you have a House of Representatives and then the Senate? The design is intentional. The House of Representatives, it's much, I don't want to say easier, but it's not quite as hard to become a congressman, congresswoman.
There's more of them.
There's more of them. Okay, what is the design? These issues come into the Congress, and people are mad, my land, my thing, my this.
And collectively they can make...
They do, but listen how the founders designed this. The House of Representatives is where all the passion is supposed to be. So somebody from Indiana wants this thing. So they bring this bill to the floor. We have got to stop this and that there. So there's yelling and screaming. This is why you hear out of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
I want to be respectful.
They're more vocal.
They are more.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like a bunch of Tammany Hall, bare knuckle brawlers down there in the House of Representatives.
Tammany Hall. What's that?
Tammany Hall is a reference to it's an old political reference to sort of low grade. Tammany Hall
is that an Irish thing?
It's an Irish.
Are you Irish?
I am. Yeah, I'm part Irish. I'm totally UK. My earliest ancestor I can find is 1652. Peter Hammond out of southern London comes over to Virginia, 1652. But I'm Irish. I got a little bit of Scottish, but I'm out of Dublin as well, out of that area. That's as far back as I can go. Yeah. So let's just fight it. You don't like it? I'll see you outside. This is kind of a Tammany Hall. Yeah. Okay, that is supposed to be that way. So the passion comes in from our we're going to fight me, you're going to. And so the House of Representatives, they yell and they scream. They make these hyperbolic, these exaggerated statements. This is destroying our country. Okay. I'm not mocking that. I'm just saying it's very passionate. Mm-hmm. But then it's supposed to come up into the Senate. They're more cerebral. They have more money. It's hard to get into the Senate if you ain't got a lot of money.
Which is a flaw, I guess.
Could be, but you want those people a little bit more removed, a little bit they're not as in contact with the everyday. Why do you want that? There are some flaws in that design. But one of the benefits of that design is you come from the people. Let's say here's where the burning hot coals of passion are with the people, us. We say to our state, we say to Fleischman, let me tell you something, Fleischman, you better get your behind up there to Washington, D.C., and you better get that dam moved. You hear me? TVA or no TVA. I don't know what I'm doing. But Fleischman, you hear me? Fleischman says, hey, you elected me, I'm taking it to Washington. So Fleischman goes in, the House of Representatives, he says, let me tell you something. We don't get that dam moved, or we don't get that lock fixed. And he yells and he screams for us. That's what he's supposed to do.
He's a delivery boy.
He's the delivery. So it's really hot here. It gets to the House of Representatives. It's supposed to cool down a little bit. But then, they're pretty heated. They'll pass it to the Senate. Then the Senate are supposed to be a little more removed. And it's supposed to cool down a little bit more. Right? And the founders designed it that process that way. Fighting mad. Send it to Congress. Congress, we're pretty mad. Send it up to the Senate. Okay, let's everybody calm down a minute. Then finally to the president. Why did they do it that way? Because they knew passionate speed kills. Passion and speed kills.
All right, they're the opposite.
Okay.
If passion and speed doesn't kill, then no passion and slow.
No passion is slow is unbelievably infuriating, okay?
But more accurate?
But over time, there you go, over time. So
tortoise in the hare.
We're not just talking about my life and your lifetime. I'm talking about my great-grandchildren's lifetime. I had a great-grandfather who lived in this country. And thank God there was still a country here for me to live. You're going to have great-grandchildren. Would to God there's still a country. Imperfect, slow, and maddening. But God, please, a country here for my great-grandchildren to say, okay, let me give it a shot now. But we wouldn't have had that if we didn't have this kind of maddening and slow process.
And collective thinking.
Collective thinking. It is infuriating. It's infuriating, but I've got to listen to Nancy Pelosi. Oh my gosh, everybody just turned us off. Dee, I have to listen to her. Why? Because my passions and my desire for rapid change is going to destroy this country. But if I say, okay, I'll take 1/10 of a loaf. I want the whole loaf. But for the sake of my great-grandchildren having something, I don't get my way. I get a tiny bit my way. I get a tiny bit my way. You get a tiny bit your way. And we move. And I die, and the country's only changed a little bit. But my children, then their children, then their children get a shot at it. How much history do you have to read to see people say, no, we're changing it now. We're changing it fast. We're changing it now. We're changing it fast. My way, my way. Europe is a living testimony to that model. This is what makes the United States so genius. This is why Ben Franklin says, when he walks out and it's voted, what do we have? And the woman says, what have you given us? Do we have a monarchy or a republic? And you remember Franklin says, you got a republic if you can keep it. What the heck did he mean by that? He means, will the structure keep people's passion and desire for speed? Can it keep it tamped down enough to where this thing will last? Will it last?
And we don't know that answer.
We don't know the answer. We still don't know the answer.
And we don't know if we're
Look at Washington this week.
And we
what
don't.
the crap? I live in Tennessee, and I know what people are going to think, D. But what the crap was that? You can't do that, man.
And are they?
Stand in the street and yell. Heck yeah. That is my right, doggone it. And people have died to give me that right to stand in the street and I can yell and I can wear whatever shirt I want. You can't do what was done in Washington this week. No, that is un-American. If you want to talk about you're wrong, Hammond, the tree of liberty must be nourished with the blood of tyrants, revolution, the blood of revolution. Who is that, Jefferson? Wrong, and I will have that debate with you as long as you want, and you're going to lose because it's not the same. But this is what happened is not America. We are America now, and that is un-American. What happened? Stand in the street, you better believe it, man. Clog the streets and let's yell. Absolutely, man. And we're going to go through that process, but that is absolutely not. That is the road to destruction. What we saw, that's the road to destruction. Now, I know I just got myself in a lot of trouble.
No, a lot of people see it the exact same way. But let's go back to what causes the brain to do this and do this and that and study why it does this and that. When the Bible says, I think it's Solomon or David, I think it's Solomon says, why given to too much wisdom? Remember that verse? No. It says, why be wisdom created sorrow? I'm not sure. You may be coming out of Ecclesiastes where Solomon says it's all vanity. But he says wisdom is sorrow. Too much wisdom.
Okay. I'm not
sorrow.
familiar with it. Okay. I'll proceed with the idea.
So he says that.
Yeah.
So all of this stuff that we're thinking about, what the brain does and the habits and the culture and the biases and all this stuff, maybe we're better off to be like Poor Richard's Almanac, where he says he's no more old drunks than he has old doctors. Maybe we just live.
No.
Do we not have a right to just live and let live? Just live and not figure it out? Why do we want to figure it out? Because the brain's trying to see a pattern?
Got it. You got it. We cannot stop trying to understand. How does an atom work? What is an atom? Right now I'm jumping to physics now. The further we go, the further we want to go. Elon Musk is trying to get us to Mars, by 2037.
And we'll do it.
What the heck are we doing? Okay, so there's the point. What are we doing? Why do Portuguese sailors get in a boat and sail off across the ocean thinking there's a pretty good chance I'm going to fall off the edge of the earth? What the heck are they doing?
And we still can't put zip ties on cereal boxes.
Out of our awareness and against our will, our brain does what it wants to do, right? It is driving us. We're trying to get control.
It's trying to find a pattern. It's not trying to really solve a problem.
It is trying to achieve understanding. Our brain cannot turn off its desire for understanding.
Is it wanting to understand or wanting to see a pattern?
Well, to understand is to see the pattern. That is what understanding is. So, for example...
So it wants to first understand.
Well, it cannot understand. Finding the pattern is the step to understanding.
That's step number one.
Is to find
the pattern. So you're saying studies show...
And you can't find a pattern until you can study it.
But the reason it's trying to find a pattern is not just because... It's just because the first human nature thing is to understand.
Yes. And how does it do that? It must study it and find a pattern to achieve understanding. Then ultimately, if possible, we want to control because we feel better when we control. That's even past understanding. We don't just...
Why do we want to control?
We feel better. We feel more powerful. We feel less threatened when we can control. We feel less threatened.
So the brain first. Now we get into that Maslow's...
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
So the first one is to understand?
Well, no. Maslow was trying to describe... Abraham Maslow was a humanistic psychologist who was trying to explain What drives us to get better and better and better? What is happening there, and how does that happen? What are the steps to lead to that? So it's what's come to be known as Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, meaning we progress through these steps trying to achieve meaning. He said we ultimately want to achieve.
So his reasons for the steps of the need was for meaning.
Yeah, we want to figure out, ultimately human beings, he said, and other psychologists said, where we're really going with this whole thing, the whole shooting match, is to answer one question. Who am I? We are, all of our life, birth to death. Really, if you distill it down, and philosophers the same thing. Not all say, but this is very similar across time, across thinkers. We are trying to figure out, who am I? Is
that good? Is that a good way to end it?
Is that the show?
I think it is.